before we get into who's under the most pressure when the season resumes for the Phoenix Suns, producer Corey, I have a question for you. Is the production studio that you are in minus 12 degrees?
Actually, the temperature is never that bad. It's cold everywhere else, pretty much.
It is freezing.
Yeah, I don't feel that where I'm at.
In this studio today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it could be in part because normally I have a hoodie on. I normally just wear a sweatshirt to the office most days because this building is notoriously cold.
Yes, it is.
Like the whole building is like an icebox. Now, I'm not allowed to touch the thermostat.
No one is.
I'm under direct, like there are directives. So I'm not allowed to touch that.
There have been emails in the past, very bold letter filled.
Oh yeah. They are, stuff is capitalized. It's underlined. It's italicized. Do not touch the controls. Now, the thermostat in here, because I can see it from where I'm sitting, says it's only 72 degrees in here.
Yes.
I don't believe it.
No?
I do. It is frigid in here. Frigid.
That's how they trick you. They keep it nice and cold, but tell you 72, so you don't realize how cold it actually is.
So not cold for you.
Well, where I'm at currently, this room, yes, after a while.
You're the main production studio. That
totally fine. No complaints.
That's nice room temp.
Yes.
You're comfortable. Now, my office, great.
Really?
Oh, my office is
I thought that was one of the colder rooms.
No, comfortable. Very comfortable in there.
Wow.
I keep the lights off. It's very nice in there. There is just, I don't know. I don't hear the vent on in here. It sounds like the vent's on, though.
Probably.
Just, I don't know. Today, for whatever reason,
just billowing.
It feels colder in this room today than it normally does.
There have been other rooms I've been in this building that have been just blowing AC.
There are times where I have meetings with people in their office, and I'm like, can we move this someplace else? I can't do this meeting in here because it's frigid.
Oh, gosh.
And I don't have a hoodie. Good thing I do have a jacket in my office. I may go grab it during the. I mean, I've only got 2 more segments left in the show, but perhaps
make the last 2 comfortable.
Yeah, right. Might want to be comfortable for the last 2 segments of the show. You know who's not comfortable? The Phoenix Suns. They're under a lot of pressure here with 28 games to go in their regular season, and I picked 3 names in the tease of who's under the most pressure when the season resumes. Is it James Jones? Is it Mike Budenholzer? Is it Devin Booker? Is there anybody else that we want to nominate for that spot? I picked those 3 guys out there because I think those 3 people's futures somewhat hang in the balance. If this team doesn't make the play-in tournament, if they miss the playoffs altogether, they don't even get to play in the reindeer game that is the NBA play-in tournament, which is you're a playoff team, but you're not really a playoff team. If they can't even make that, how is James Jones's job not under a microscope? How are we not having a conversation about a reset at the president of basketball operations level? He's the guy that oversaw this roster being put together. He's the guy that has overseen multiple iterations of this roster be put together. And what do they have to show for it? They got swept out of the playoffs last year. The year before won 1 playoff series. This year would have not made the playoffs. That's not a resume of somebody that should get to see the next iteration of this team through. So there's pressure on James Jones. Problem is, what can he do? Trade deadline has come and gone. He didn't make the trade for Jimmy Butler. He didn't utilize all of the picks that they got back from Utah, utilized the ability that trade opened up to move 1 pick to get Yusuf Nurkic out of town, to free up that money, to free up that roster spot. But there's nothing he can do. Maybe he can attack the buyout market. I think it was this morning, it might have been late in the day yesterday, odds to land Patrick Beverley, and the Suns were listed as the favorite, according to the sports books, to land Pat Bev. All right, maybe there's pathways to get players on this roster, but the hay's in the barn for James Jones. This roster, when the trade deadline came and went, is settled. That is the roster. That is what this team is. So is there pressure on him? Sort of, yes. There's nothing he can do about it, though. If he feels the pressure, there's nothing that he can do about it. His time to do something about it has come and gone. Mike Budenholzer, I do think there's pressure on him. I've outlined my position on this. If this season ends the way it's trending towards ending, I don't know how there isn't major overhaul at all 3 levels of this organization. Players, coaches, front office. I don't know how we avoid conversations about Durant and company leaving, Budenholzer and company leaving, and Jones and company leaving. I don't know how we avoid those conversations. I don't know how we avoid that reality. And I don't know how the Suns would look at their season and want to keep the status quo and keep those guys around. I just don't see why that would be a reality that Matt Ishbia would choose. So there is pressure on Mike Budenholzer because while I do think there would try to be some avoidance of 4 coaches in 4 years, is Mike Budenholzer the coach that you want to see oversee a retool, a rebuild, a 2 or 3 year gap between trying to be playoff relevant? You didn't bring him in here for that. Now you sign him to a 5-year contract, so there's probably going to be an appetite to keep him around. But if things go completely south, and I mean they're not even close to a playoff spot, they're 5-6 games short of a play-in tournament spot, I don't know how you're going to avoid it. I don't know how you avoid making a change at the coaching spot. And then there's Devin Booker. And while I think of the 3 guys that we're talking about, James Jones, Coach Bud, and now Devin Booker, the least amount of pressure is on Book. Because I think there is a strong want in that front office of having Devin Booker for the next iteration of this Suns basketball team. There is a desire to give Devin Booker another core of players to try to win with. I don't think there's a willingness or an appetite to trade Devin Booker the way there is seemingly going to be a willingness or appetite to trade Kevin Durant when we get to the summer. I think they would want to avoid at all costs trading Devin Booker, and they would try to see this through without that reality. Whereas I think there would be more willingness to move on from James Jones, more of a willingness to move on from Mike Budenholzer. I don't think there's that same willingness to move on from Devin Booker. Is there anybody else we want to add to this mix? Is there pressure on Kevin Durant? The reason why I didn't have Kevin Durant listed here is he's going to play someplace else next year, almost assuredly. Unless this team goes on a miracle run through the final 28 games, wins the play-in tournament, wins a first-round series, is competitive in the second round. That's the only way where there might be a consideration to run it back. And so Kevin Durant is gone. There's not a whole lot he himself can do, just like with Devin Booker. There's not a whole lot that these guys have to do to solidify their future. I think their futures are already solidified. Kevin Durant's future, I think, is solidified. And that future is someplace else next season. Devin Booker's future, I think, is mostly solidified. He's going to be a member of the Phoenix Suns next year. Coach Bud, James Jones, I don't think there is solidified. Bradley Beal, he has a no-trade clause. His future is solidified. There's no pressure. There's pride. He wants to play better. He wants to be a better teammate. He wants to turn things around. He doesn't want the constant noise and negativity surrounding this team. I mean, I certainly would like to avoid the negativity. I certainly would like to have a more positive, upbeat attitude when we talk about the Phoenix Suns here on the program. It'd be nice. They're not giving me a ton of reason to do so, which is why when we have these conversations, it ends up going down that negative path. It's maybe why I tried to spend the first couple of minutes of this segment talking about the air conditioning in this building rather than talk about the Phoenix Suns, because it does feel like same old, same old. It does feel like we are talking about things that are just unavoidable. But is there anybody else that you want to throw in here? Grayson Allen? Again, big picture. James Jones, Mike Budenholzer, Devin Booker. Those are the 3 people who I think have the most pressure on them. And if you're asking me where I think the most pressure relies, it's on James Jones. There's nothing he can do about it, but if this doesn't work, I think he's the most likely. Of these 3 candidates, Jones, Budenholzer, Booker, which is most likely to not be a part of the Suns next season? Wouldn't you say it's James Jones? Wouldn't you say that there's an appetite to keep Devin Booker? There's a contract that is only 1 year old with Coach Bud, where Jones has overseen multiple versions of this, it might be time to get fresh eyes looking at this problem, fresh eyes looking at this roster, looking at this organization, overseeing the basketball ops sides of things. Bud and Booker, I think there's an appetite for those guys to stick around. And for Coach Bud, it's not because of his coaching chops. It's because, do I want to fire another coach? Do I want to pay another coach? I'm already paying Frank Vogel because I fired him after 1 year. Do I want to fire Bud and pay him the rest of that deal when he could sit at home and collect the final 4 years of that contract? Of those three, the most pressure is on James Jones, and he also has the least amount of say in his future at this point. He relies on those other two guys to potentially keep his future here.